Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about my favorite knots to tie while fishing and knots that every fisherman needs to know how to tie. So firstly, for the guy who really only needs one or two knots, if you're only throwing braid, only throwing mono, only throwing fluoro, you only need two knots. One of those is the knot that connects your line to your spool, which we'll get into later, and one of those is the knot that connects your bait to your line. That's what we're going to go over first. My favorite line to bait knot, the Palomar knot. Alright, so I went to Dollar General and bought a little poster board for you guys so y'all could see a little bit better. So don't say old Nate never did nothing for you. Okay, so you're going to take your hook, your line, you're going to feed your line either way through the eye of the hook, doesn't matter which way. Some knots it does. Okay, you're going to feed it just like that. And then you're going to feed it back through that eye, just like that. So you've got your main line and your tag in, and on this side you've got your loop. Okay, so you're going to take your loop on this side. I like to pinch my tag in and my main line in my left hand. I take that loop and cross it, just like that, over my main line and my tag. And then I take this loop, the first loop, and make an overhand knot, and I put it through this loop, okay? So just like that, it's gonna look about like that. You're gonna have your loop, your first loop coming through here, and this loop you made, okay? From there, you're gonna cinch it down just a little bit, okay? I like to put my finger in between there so it doesn't go all the way down to the eye of the hook. Okay, you're gonna take the first loop again that you made, and you're gonna feed the whole hook through that loop, okay? So that hook has gone through that loop. Your loop's right here now. Your second loop's right here. So what you're going to do from here is just tighten it down. Now if you're using monofilament or fluorocarbon, it's best to wet the line first so you don't burn it. Braid's fine. If you're going to tie Palomar with straight braid, I tend to leave a little bit longer leader or tag end, excuse me. So that's the Palomar knot. Super great knot. I tie it for almost everything. Alright, well now you know how to tie your line to your bait. Let's say you want to throw braided line, and on the end of that braided line you want to throw a leader, which is something I do a lot of. You're going to need a braid to leader knot or a connection knot between those two lines, either braid to fluorocarbon or braid to monofilament. So the next knot we're going to get into is my favorite braid to mono or braid to fluoro knot, which is the FG knot. Out of these 6 knots, this knot is certainly the most complicated one. So y'all bear with me, and if you need to pause the video, slow it down, y'all feel free to do so. So firstly, you need your braided main line and you need some leader. This is 25-pound monofilament leader right here. So you're going to take your braided main line, which is attached to your rod, which in this case would be towards you guys, that direction. And you're going to give it some tension. So what I do is I just hold it with my teeth and give it a little bit of tension. Okay, and then you're going to take your monofilament leader and you're going to put it over the top of that braided main line. Okay, so it's just making a cross, it's making a T shape. Okay, and then from there you're going to take your monofilament and you're going to go under that braid, make a wrap underneath that braid. Okay, that's the first step to the FG knot. The next wrap is going to be back towards me. So you go, I'll show you again. You wrap it, you make a T with it. Okay, and then you wrap it under towards the rod. The first wrap is always towards your rod. Okay, so under towards the rod, and you're going to come back and do it opposite way, under away from the rod. Okay, and then you're going to do that however many times. With heavier line, I like to do 20 times. With lighter line, I go 30. That lighter line, you just want to make sure you've got a good grip on it or it will slip through. So that's 2 times. So let's just do it about 10 times just for this example so you guys don't have to sit here forever, okay? So that's 2. We'll go 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I should mention while I'm doing this, as you're wrapping, you want to make sure that these wraps are tight. You need them to be as tight as possible, so after every 2 wraps, 3 wraps, pull on both sides of your braid to tighten it down, okay? So that's 9 wraps, 10 wraps. So we'll just do 10 for now, like I said. So I'm going to pull on both sides of my braid, Make sure it's kind of tight, okay? And then I'm going to take this tag end of my braid and trim it. I don't like the tag ends of my braid to be very long. So we've got the tag end of your monofilament, we've got the tag end of your braid, and we've got the main line of the braid going back towards you guys, okay? All right, so you've got your two tag ends. What you're going to want to do, put the tag end of your mono against the main line of your braid, okay? Just like that. So the tag end of your mono is up against the main line of your braid, and then the tag end of your braid, you're going to tie an overhand knot. So just a granny knot, some people call it, around the main line in your braid and the tag end in your monofilament. So you're going to tie a granny knot, overhand knot, whatever you want to call it, just like that. Make a little loop, cinch it down. That's all you're going to do. You're going to do that a couple times. I'll just do it once for this example. I usually do 2 to 3. And then from there, you are going to trim off your monofilament leader. So I would come here and I would get it as close to the braid as I could possibly get it. Which obviously right there is not as close to the braid as I could possibly get it. But I like to do that as close to it as I can get it. And then from there, I will do 2 to 3 more overhand knots. Like I said, I'm just going to do one right here. So I would do another overhand knot over just the braided main line with your braid tag end. There's nothing else to wrap it around. And then I would do a double overhand knot. So I would do an overhand knot like we've been doing, just like that. And then I would start a new overhand knot right over the top of that. Okay, so I just tied a double overhand knot, and then you want to cinch that down. Okay, so I've cinched that double overhand knot down, and what that's going to do is prevent that braid from backing off as much. Sometimes when you tie a Palomar knot, or not Palomar, excuse me, sometimes when you tie an FG knot, that braid, those overhand knots, if you don't do that double overhand knot, they'll back off on you. And you don't want that because then it could back off all the way on your knot. I trim my braided tag end longer than my monofilament tag end because the braid is so limp, it's not going to affect your guides. It's not going to have any drag going through your guides. The monofilament or the fluorocarbon will, the braid won't. And if you can get away with a little bit longer tag end on your braid, it's just a little bit of insurance. There's nothing wrong with it. So I do that. So the best way to test your FG knot is to pull. You pull on your main monofilament line, you pull on your main braided line, and you just give it a good tug, and yep, just like that, you give it a good tug. You don't want your fingers to come off, obviously, but you need to make sure it's tight. I mean, if it's not tight, that's exactly what will happen. You can see right there, that mono just came straight out of those wraps. Make sure those wraps are tight. I want to reiterate that. That knot will not come undone. And then when you're done tying it, that's an easy way to test it real quick. And if it comes undone, yeah, it sucks. You got to tie the whole knot over again. But if you tie it right, you know you're not going to lose a fish on that knot. And that's what I really like about that FG knot. And that's why I continue to throw it. All right. So if you're one of those guys who has a fresh new spool line, needs to put it on their reel and doesn't know how, this is the part of the video for you. What you're going to want to tie is what I always tie, an arbor knot. An arbor knot is a really easy way to connect your fishing line to your reel. The only caveat with an arbor knot is you can't really use braid very well unless you have a braid ready spool, because if you tie braid directly to your spool with an arbor knot, you'll have some braid slippage, which feels like, if you pull on your line, it feels like the drag is slipping, but it's not. It's the braid slipping on the slick spool, which I've had happen before. So that's the only caveat, but you can fix that in a couple ways. You can put tape on the back of your spool. You can buy a braid ready spool, which are pretty prevalent nowadays, especially in spinning reels. Or you can start spooling with cheap monofilament, cheap fluorocarbon, something like that, and then tie braid to that fluorocarbon and fill your spool the rest of the way up with braid, which is what I do a lot of the time. I am going just to use, I just have this round flashlight. Stupid, I know, but I don't have an empty spool, number one, and number two, I don't really feel like taking it apart. This will be much easier to show you guys on. Super simple to tie. So I'm going to take this 65-pound braid. Like I said earlier, typically I don't like tying braid straight to a spool, but we'll talk about that here in a minute. So what I'll do is pretend this is the spool. It's a round spool. I will take the braid, feed it through the eye in the reel if it's a bait caster, or just loop it around the spool if it's a spinning pole, and I will do that. So I've looped it around the spool just like that, and then I'm going to bring this up here so you guys can see it. I've looped it around the spool. This is the line right here. This is the line coming off of your spool, and this is your tag end right here, okay? So your tag end, I'm gonna take, and I'm literally just gonna tie a double overhand knot like we just did on that FG. I'm gonna tie a double overhand knot. So that's 1, that's 2. Okay, so all I've done there is I've tied a double overhand knot right there on that spool. Okay, if I pull on this main line now, this tag end will come all the way through that knot I've just tied, especially with braid, but it will with mono and fluoro too. Okay, what you need to do, you need to take this tag end and you just tie a little knot in the end of it. You just tie a little bitty overhand knot in the very end of that. Super simple. I'll show you guys real quick. Super simple. You just tie a little overhand knot in the end of that, and you can trim that excess if you want. And then you just take your main line and you just pull. You just keep pulling, keep pulling, keep pulling, keep pulling, keep pulling, keep pulling. And then that knot will cinch right up against that double overhand knot, and that is an arbor knot. And then from there, you can just reel till your spool is as full as you want that spool to be. So if you are one of those guys that wants to use braid as your main line, what I do, like I said earlier, is back my reel up with a little bit of cheap monofilament. And the best way to connect that monofilament to that braid is a double uni knot. Yes, you can use an FG, like we talked about earlier, like I showed you earlier in the video. The FG takes a little bit longer, and in all honesty, when I'm spooling that up, that knot's never going to come out of my reel. If it does, I'm low on braid and I need to re-spool. So I just want a quick, easy knot that I can tie that I know is going to be fine in the bottom of that spool where I'm never going to see it. So this is how you tie a double uni knot. The only thing I'm going to say, if you plan on using this as your braid to leader knot, you're going to have to use shorter leaders, because the great part about the FG knot is it's a very narrow knot. It goes through your guides very easily with little resistance. This is not a narrow knot, especially when you get up into bigger line diameters. This knot is really bulky, and it really has a hard time going through those guides. So it's a pretty easy knot to tie. You're going to grab your braid and your mono backing or your fluoro backing. I like cheap mono for backing. And you're just going to line them up and get about a foot or so. A little less than a foot, maybe 10 inches worth, lined up on top of each other. Either one's fine, it doesn't really matter. On top of one another. Okay, so I like to pinch in the middle, in between the tag end of my mono and the tag end of my braid. And then you have to pick a side to start on. It really doesn't matter. The first, I'm going to start on this braid, okay? So I'm going to come here, and I'm going to take this braid, this tag end, and I'm going to pinch right there under that tag end, okay? And I'm going to leave a little loop right there, okay, with that braid. So I'm going to take that braid, leave that loop, and I'm going to wrap, okay, around the mono and the braid. I'm going to wrap, okay, so I'm going to wrap 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'm just going to wrap it 5 times, and with braid this heavy, you really don't need to wrap it much more than that. So I'm going to wrap it 5 times, and then I'm going to feed that tag right back through that loop that I'm holding with my right hand, okay? So I'm going to feed that through, and I'm going to cinch it down, okay? Cinch it down, cinch it down, cinch it down, cinch it down. It's going to look about like that. You don't need to cinch it down any harder than that right now. Okay, leave it, leave it. I know you want to cinch it down tight. Don't cinch it down tight just yet. Okay, so you're going to come to your other end, okay? So you see that knot's way down here. You're going to come about right here with your other line. You're going to take your mono, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to make a loop right there at the end of your mono. So you've got your main line braid coming out here. You've got your tag into your mono, and you're going to make a loop around your main line braid and your mono, okay? So you've got your loop, you've got your tag into your mono, and you're going to make that many loops or maybe a little bit more back towards the knot you just tied, okay? Back towards your spool. So that's 2 loops, 3 loops, 4 loops. We'll do 4 loops for now, okay? So you've got those loops going back towards your spool like that. You've got your loop, and you're going to fit your line, the tag into your mono line, back through that loop right there, okay? And you're going to cinch that down, cinch that down, cinch that down. I like to wet the mono a little bit, and then from there, you just literally pull the line from your spool and the main line of your braid. Don't pull on either tag ends, you'll screw it up. Just pull on both sides, just like that. Those knots are going to meet, and as you pull, those knots are going to tighten one another up. You see that? you've got on this side right here, you've got the braid knot. On the other side, you've got the mono knot. So the braid knot is going to be on the side where your mono is, and the mono knot's going to be on the side that your braid is. All right. You've got your 2 tag ends. You just trim those to your liking, and then you've got your double uni knot. All right. So the next couple knots that I'm going to show you how to tie have to do a little bit with fly fishing. They're the knots that I tie when I fly fish. They're really simple, super easy. You can use them on all sorts of fishing, and I have. So now I'm going to quickly show you guys how to tie the clinch knot and the improved clinch knot. Super quick, super easy knots. We're going to start with just the clinch knot. Put your line through the eye of the hook. Leave a loop at the bottom by the eye of the hook, okay? And then you're just going to wrap around the main line with the tag end anywhere from 5 to 6 or 7 times. It doesn't matter. I usually like 6 or 7. You can go 8 or 10. Really doesn't matter. Just whatever you feel comfortable with, and do some experimenting, whatever you like. So you're going to wrap, and then the tag end is going to go back through that loop down back towards the bottom. I like to wet it if it's mono or fluoro. Braid, it really doesn't matter, okay? And then look, super satisfying. You just pull on your main line, and that knot is just going to cinch, 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 cinch. And then there you go. That's your clinch knot. You can trim your tag end to your liking, like always. This knot's great. It's not the strongest knot in the world, never has been, but it's great if you need to tie a really quick knot in a pinch. And it's great for small baits that are really, really hard to mess around with. That's why I like it for tying flies. All right, so this is the improved clinch knot. Super easy to tie. You're gonna go through the eye of the hook. You're gonna come up. So you're gonna take your tag end, lay it on top of your main line, and you're gonna make a loop up here up top with your tag end. So you've got your tag end and your main line down here, and you've got the end of your tag end coming down here, and you've got your loop that you're pinching right here. And then you're gonna make a couple wraps. You do however many you like. I like, again, 5 to 7. So you're gonna just do your wraps, and then you're gonna feed that line through this loop up here that you've made. You wanna feed it the opposite way that you made it, that you've been wrapping. So you feed it through here, through that loop you've made up top, just like that. And then again, you pull it, and then you just cinch it down. Super easy knot. It works very similar to that just clinch knot, but again, it's a little bit stronger of a knot. It's gonna hold a little bit bigger fish. It's not gonna break near as easy, and it's almost as fast to tie. Okay, so the last knot we're gonna go over today is the double overhand surgeon's knot. Again, I use this knot when tying tippet to a leader in fly fishing. The line, this is gonna be your leader, and this is gonna be your main line. Okay, so you're gonna take your leader and your main line and start it out very similar to how we started out that double uni knot. You're gonna wrap it over itself, okay? So after that, you're just gonna make a loop with those 2 lines. Your material, you're just gonna make a loop with those 2, just like that. So I've got both lines right there in that loop, and then you're gonna feed through the tag end of your main line and the rest of the leader that you want. So it can be, you know, anywhere from a foot of tippet to, you know, 6 or 7 feet of tippet. Sometimes you're wanting those long strands of tippet, and you end up having to do really, really long tag ends and feeding it through. So you've got one loop just like that. We'll do that one more time. That's why it's called a double overhand surgeon. So you feed in your, I like to do them both at the same time if it's possible. So I like to feed through my tag end, in this case it's my braid, and the leader. So I've got that, and it's coming through, keeps coming through that loop, keeps coming through that loop, keeps coming through that loop, and it's just like that. And once you've done that, you've done it twice, and that's why it's called a double overhand surgeon's knot. And from there, you can just cinch it down, maybe wet it when it gets about right there, and then keep cinching it down. And there you go. That's a double overhand surgeon's knot. Well, there you have it. That's all 6 knots that I tie right now. I've experimented with other knots in the past, but none of them compare to how reliable these knots are. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, please subscribe. We're on our way to 100 subscribers, so I'm hoping that'll be soon. If you have anything you want to say down in the comments, say it down in the comments. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you guys for watching again, and we'll see you next time on Hooked and Loaded.